Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Liam adjusted the tie she'd chosen for him, the navy one with the subtle diamond pattern, and glanced down at the nearly empty wedding savings spreadsheet. Something didn't add up. A few weeks ago, they had just under $34,000 saved. Today, the account showed $18,200. He frowned, leaned closer to the screen, and refreshed the page. Same number. He rubbed his temples, telling himself it had to be a mistake. Maybe a delayed transaction from the caterer or venue deposit. But he hadn't authorized anything recently. And Isabel, while generous with aesthetic details, had promised they'd discuss any big expenses together. He heard her humming down the hallway, the same carefree hum she always had after shopping. Her footsteps padded into their shared apartment, light and graceful. A few seconds later, a sharp click, her newest heels on the tile entryway. Liam turned his chair slightly. Isabel entered the living room carrying two bright orange shopping bags with gold lettering. Hermes. Again. "Hey, babe," she said, smiling and breezing past him to their bedroom. "Big day. Got some finishing touches for the honeymoon." Liam stood. "Hey, quick question." He kept his voice even. "Have you made any withdrawals from the wedding account recently?" She paused, not a flinch, but a brief stillness. Her hand hovered over the closet door handle. Then came the laugh, casual and fluid. "Oh, probably just the florist invoice. I moved things around a bit. Don't worry, I've got it under control." Liam's jaw tightened. "Isabel, we're missing over $15,000. She turned, the smile faltering. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm asking you to explain." Her expression hardened. "Liam, not everything has to be a courtroom cross-examination. It's just some early purchases, gifts, accessories, details you wouldn't understand." She stepped into the closet and closed the door. Liam didn't follow. He stood frozen for a moment, the tone of her voice replaying in his head. He thought of the dinner nights she skipped to stay late at work, the endless packages arriving weekly, the credit card statements she insisted on managing. Something about it all felt choreographed. Later that night, after Isabel had drifted off with her tablet in hand and silk robe barely tied, Liam returned to the spreadsheet. He opened every transaction record, highlighting the ones labeled miscellaneous or from unrecognized vendors. 5,000 at a boutique he'd never heard of. 3,000 on a styling consultant. A name popped up repeatedly. Lucienne René. Liam searched it. A Paris-based personal shopper and luxury liaison. Their client list read like a tabloid. He looked toward the bedroom. She was asleep, her phone on the nightstand, unlocked, Face ID registered to both of them. A romantic decision at the time. With a gentle breath, Liam picked it up. The message threads told a story money couldn't hide. There were photos of handbags, plans for revenge luxury, and jokes about draining the dull accountant before he even notices. The contact's name was changed to Mandy, but the texts didn't lie. Liam clicked into the contact info. A photo popped up, shirtless, smug, lounging in a familiar villa she'd told Liam was part of a college friend's timeshare. The man's name wasn't Mandy. It was Aaron, her ex. The one she claimed was dead to her. Liam's breath caught. One thread read, Don't worry. He thinks the money's going to centerpieces and candles. We'll laugh about this in Capri. Liam placed the phone back where he'd found it and walked to the kitchen. The cold tile beneath his feet grounded him as his pulse raged. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was surgical. She hadn't splurged, she'd siphoned, strategized. But he didn't yell, didn't wake her or smash her designer luggage. Instead, he opened his laptop and logged into their wedding fund one last time. He stared at the remaining $18,200 and sat perfectly still, considering. Then he smiled. That night, Liam made a transfer, not to himself, not to savings, but to a name that had shown up repeatedly in Isabel's phone, Aaron V., a bank in Marseille. A memo line typed slowly, deliberately, "You two deserve each other." The next morning, the sun filtered gently through the sheer white curtains, painting long golden lines across the hardwood floor. Isabel was still asleep, her face relaxed in a dreamless haze. Liam stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee, steady hands betraying none of the storm that had brewed inside him all night. She entered groggily, stretching in one of his shirts, barefoot and unaware. Smells good," she murmured, reaching for the mug in his hand, like she always did. He let her take it. "Made a little change to the wedding plans," Liam said, voice light, conversational. She raised an eyebrow mid-sip. "What kind of change?" "Well," he said, tapping his phone screen casually, "you know how we agreed the wedding was going to be about us? The future? Trust?" She blinked at him, not fully awake yet. "Yeah?" "I donated what was left of the wedding fund," Liam said, letting each word land, "to someone who needed it more." The room was suddenly still. Isabel froze, then forced a laugh. "Donated? Wait, what does that mean? To who?" He took a deep breath, fearing the silence before he answered. "To Erin." Her face cracked, not entirely, not at first, but something in her eyes shifted. "You're joking," she said, but her voice had already dropped half a pitch. "You're not that petty." Liam tilted his head. "Petty? No, but I'm thorough." She gaped at him. "You went through my phone?" "No," Liam said evenly. "I investigated. There's a difference." He let the silence stretch. Her shoulders tensed. Her fingers tightened around the mug. "That money was for our future," she said sharply, now defensive. He smiled gently. "Our future ended when you used our wedding fund to finance handbags and vacations with your ex." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. He stepped forward. "You didn't just lie to me. You bet against me, and now you've lost." She moved to speak, but he was already picking up his keys. "Don't worry, I'm not going to make a scene. Not like you deserve. But I'd appreciate it if you were gone before I got back." "Liam." He didn't look back. The door clicked softly behind him. That afternoon, Liam went to his office for the first time in days. The familiar rhythms of spreadsheets and expense reports were oddly comforting. His assistant, Marcy, raised an eyebrow when he entered. "You look like someone who just beat the final boss." He chuckled. "Let's just say I did some housekeeping." By midweek, word had quietly spread among mutual friends that the wedding was off. Isabel had spun her version, something vague about irreconcilable goals. Liam didn't say a word. He didn't have to. What he did instead was start over. He canceled the venue, refused a single refund. Every deposit lost, every dollar burned, an offering. Not to revenge, but to clarity. He called vendors and told them to keep the deposits, book someone else. No hard feelings, he'd say. And he meant it. The act of giving away what had once been tied to her made everything cleaner. But Liam wasn't done. A week later, a friend from the gym, Kyle, invited him to a local startup mixer. "You need to get out," Kyle had said. "New faces, new energy." Liam almost declined, but something in him, some faint pulse of curiosity, pushed him to accept. At the event, in a modest rooftop lounge, buzzing with low conversation and ambition, Liam met Celeste. She wasn't flashy, no designer bags, just clear, curious eyes and a low laugh that felt more honest than anything he'd heard in months. She asked what he did. He paused. "I make sure people don't lose what they've earned." She smiled. "That sounds like a superpower." "Not quite," he replied, "but it works." They talked for hours. When he got home that night, Isabel was gone. No note, no call, just a half-empty closet and the lingering scent of her perfume. He opened the bedroom window and let it drift out. Later, as he stood in that quiet room, he realized something. He didn't miss her. He missed the idea of who she was. But the truth? She was never that person. He had loved a story, not a woman. And now he was writing a new one. Liam's mornings began differently now. No urgent texts about floral arrangements, no Instagram ads for matching wedding bands, no Isabel humming off key in the shower. Just him, the soft clink of a spoon against a coffee mug, and a growing sense of peace he hadn't realized he'd been missing for years. Work came easier. He walked into meetings with more presence, more clarity. His team noticed. "You've got a glow, man," his colleague Daniel said one afternoon. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." He nodded but didn't elaborate. Because how do you explain that peace doesn't always come from gaining something new, but from removing what was weighing you down? Still, the past had a habit of echoing. 2 weeks after Isabel left, Liam received a delivery at his office. No note, just a small white box, carefully wrapped in tissue. Inside was the engraved silver watch he'd given her for their 3rd anniversary. Underneath, tucked against the velvet, was the ring, the one she'd chosen, the one she said made her feel like a queen. He stared at it for a long time. Then he shut the box and locked it in a drawer, not out of anger, but because some things just didn't belong in the present anymore. He hadn't blocked Isabel. Part of him thought he might, but instead he let her stay in his digital periphery, like a shadow at the edge of a memory. He noticed she was traveling. Dubai, Paris, Miami. Always with friends, never the ex. At least not in photos. But Liam didn't stalk. He didn't engage, just observed with the same detached focus he brought to his job. One night, Celeste messaged him. "There's a jazz bar near my place. You still like live music?" He replied instantly, "Always." They met at a candlelit spot, tucked between 2 brownstones. No pretension, just a worn stish and a saxophone that seemed to breathe. Celeste ordered whiskey. He went with red wine. They didn't talk about the past, not much. Just music, books, and the strange thrill of rebuilding. Halfway through the night, she asked, "Were you really going to marry her?" Liam hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." "What changed?" He swirled the wine slowly, watching the deep red bleed against the glass. "I realized the person I loved never actually existed, just a version of her I wanted to believe in." Celeste tilted her head. That's heartbreakingly honest. He looked at her. It was necessary. Later, when they stepped outside into the cool air, she kissed his cheek and said, "For what it's worth, you seem like someone who deserves better stories." He watched her walk away, her silhouette fading into the night. And for the first time in months, he believed that maybe he did. The following weekend, Liam did something bold. He emailed Aaron. It was short, simple. "Hope the donation helped. I don't need anything in return. Just thought you should know the money was originally meant for a future that no longer exists. Do with it what you will. L." He didn't expect a reply, but it came anyway. 2 days later, "I used it to cover my sister's medical bills. She cried when I told her. I didn't know where it came from until now. Thank you." Liam read the message twice. Then he closed his laptop and exhaled. That night, he stood on his balcony, watching the city flicker and shift below him. Somewhere, Isabel was probably sipping something expensive and pretending to be someone else's perfect girl. He didn't care, not out of bitterness, but because it no longer mattered. Liam had made peace with the truth. Love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about consistency, integrity, trust. Things Isabel had traded for handbags and half-truths. He didn't regret the love he gave her, only the time it took to realize she didn't deserve it. Now, with his life lighter and clearer, he was ready for something else, something real. The spring came early that year. Trees bloomed with soft pinks and hopeful greens. And for the first time in months, Liam didn't feel the usual ache behind his ribs when he walked through the park alone. He still wore the same wool coat he'd had for years, frayed at the cuffs, reliable in its warmth. But something about him had changed. A subtle looseness in his shoulders, a quiet presence in his gaze. Healing had arrived not with some dramatic flourish, but in slow, consistent steps. Mornings when he made coffee just the way he liked. Evenings when he read instead of scrolling through memories. Rebuilding didn't mean replacing what was lost. It meant making space for what could be better. One Saturday morning, Liam found himself walking past a boutique he'd never noticed before. The window display featured hand-thrown ceramics and vintage books. A sign on the door read, "Locally owned. Quiet souls welcome." He smiled and stepped inside. Celeste stood at the counter, sorting through a stack of handwritten journals. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Didn't expect to see you here. Didn't know this place existed," he said. "Feels like it found me." They browsed together for an hour. Talking felt easy. She told him about her latest project, curating a collection of stories from people who had rebuilt their lives after betrayal. "There's so much noise about heartbreak," she said, "but not enough about what comes after." He looked at her then, not as a friend, not even as a potential partner, but as someone who truly saw people, not their surface, not their mistakes, but their truth. "You ever need a story," he said softly, "I've got one for you. I might take you up on that." Later, as they sat in the park again, watching a jazz trio warm up on a nearby stage, she nudged his shoulder. "Did you ever find closure with Isabel?" He paused. The name didn't sting anymore, just settled quietly in his chest like a chapter he'd already turned. "I didn't need closure. I needed clarity, and I have it now." Celeste nodded, then leaned in slightly. You think you'll ever love again? He smiled, not with bitterness or regret, but with a quiet kind of hope. Not the way I did before, but maybe better. She didn't respond, just offered her hand, fingers barely brushing his. He took it, because healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering your worth. It meant learning to love yourself enough to walk away, and then being brave enough to try again. Back at home that evening, Liam opened the box Isabel had sent him all those weeks ago. The ring was still there, still beautiful, but it no longer held weight. He took it out, walked to a small balcony, and watched the city exhale under the golden light of sunset. Then, without ceremony, he dropped the ring into a donation bag he'd been preparing for goodwill. Let someone else find beauty in it. He didn't need it anymore. Because real wealth, he'd come to understand, isn't about the things you own. It's the peace you carry, the truth you live by, and the people you let walk beside you when you finally know the path you deserve. Liam wasn't planning a wedding anymore. He was building a life, one grounded in honesty. And this time, he wasn't doing it for anyone's approval. He was doing it for himself.